From the dark side of the street to the dark side of the moon. From the ancient antediluvian past to the furthest reaches of the far-flung future. From science fiction to science fact. From conspiracy theory to conspiracy reality. From hometown shenanigans to international intrigues. Your frequency is ascending. Revolution-radio.com, revolutiontalkradio.com, revolutionradio.tv, and freedomslips.com, where the truth never sleeps, where we are the hammers and we are the nails, where we have a program that is fully captioned for the thinking impaired. It's Strange Universe Radio. With your host, the man so nice they named him thrice, the man whose ego can be seen from space, the Sean David Morton. Welcome. Good to have you on this marvelous Monday. Rabbits, white rabbits. Quick, say it. If you haven't said it today, say it. White rabbits. It is, of course, Monday, December 1st. December, the 10th month, according to the Roman calendar, till the couple of Caesars, Augustus and Julius, wanted to throw in 2 more months there. But welcome, everybody. It's good to had a fantastic weekend. I hope you all did as well. Did you all have a good weekend over Thanksgiving? Because my Thanksgiving was superb. I can't even remember having such fun. Actually, over Thanksgiving weekend, it was fantabulous. Actually, it was here Friday. I told you about some of it, but just to let you know how great it all was. Of course, Thanksgiving Day, Melissa worked at Mousewitch, the Tragic Kingdom, at Miseryland. No, at Disneyland. It was good fun. And then we had a fantastic Thanksgiving feast at the Storyteller Cafe, which is right there in the Grand California Hotel. And my bestest buddy, my brother, Will Chappell, brought his 3 lovely children. His older daughter, Reese, who I think is 5 now. I think 5. And she's the dynamic fearless Leo. And then Chloe, who was born on my birthday, oddly enough, October 1st, who's the whiny little Libra, who was really good. Didn't whine at all, actually. It was so fun. Took her on rides and everything. She wasn't screaming, Daddy, Daddy, Daddy. And, of course, the world's happiest child is his kid, Braden, who's just got a head like a pumpkin and just is always happy, except for when you wash his face, because I don't think he actually has a digestive tract. I don't think most children do. I don't think you actually develop a stomach and a digestive tract. I think you're actually like a zeta reticulum. And you just absorb and excrete nutrients through your skin, I think, until you're about 10. You might as well, it's pointless to put a plate in front of little kids. You might as well just get a big trough, strip them naked, roll them in the food, and the food just gets sucked in through their pores, I think, somehow. So, and that's with this kid Braden. He's so happy. And have you ever seen a dirty kid that wasn't happy? Ever seen a dirty kid that wasn't happy? I haven't. So the funny thing is when we clean his face off, he cries. That's the only time he ever cries. When we wipe his face. He's like, ah! And then you stop wiping his face and he stops. And you wipe his face again, ah! And he cries again. So it was good fun. Anyway, he had great fun at Disneyland. Actually taught Reese a trick. The older girl, I taught her, she wanted a tiara. She's getting all princessy now. So she wanted a tiara. So they actually had a Mickey Mouse ear hat that said princess on it. I'm completely blowing out her expectations right away. And it had a little tiara on the front of the hat. So she was so sweet because I got her this hat. And then she said, well, my sister Chloe is going to want one too. So I'm like, all right, because I'm a total sucker. And I bought I said, what kind of hat does she want? She goes, well, she likes Anna and Elsa from Frozen, because Frozen is like the thing. So they actually have a very cute Mickey Mouse ears hat that on half of it is Anna, and it's got the black and green stripes on it. And then you turn it around, and it's Elsa's the princess, right? She's the snow queen one that makes all the snow. How do I know? And half of it's Elsa and half of it's Anna. So I got this hat for her. But I told her, I said, you have to do this. Here's the deal. You got to play a game. Every time I snap my fingers, you got to come run up and hold my hand. especially if we're in like a big crowd or something. If you see me snapping my fingers, you have to run up and hold my hand. So she goes, okay, all right, we're going to try it. So I snap my fingers. She runs up and holds my hand. I said, okay, stay here now. And I run up forward in the store and I snap my fingers again. She runs up and holds my hand. I said, okay, one more time. And I snap my fingers and she comes running to hold my hand and I go running through the store and she's chasing me through the store. And I'm running around the styles, the turnstiles and merchandise, whatever else. And she's just laughing her head off because I'm holding my hand out because she's got to catch my hand out. And then she catches my hand. So I totally had her trained all day. Where I just like snap my fingers, she'd run up, and my friend Will's like, "Wow, how'd you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, it's how bribery goes." I think I gave her $1 or $2 or something, but it was very fun. And then Friday, I was actually here with you on Friday, but on Friday we went to Chinatown, and I got my $8 haircut. He's got a bowl that's just the right size. It's very difficult to get a bowl that's the size of my head, but there's a there's a great Chinese guy in Chinatown. And I get a haircut for $8. It's like the best haircut anywhere. It's $8. Here in the South Bay, it's like $60. I go to these snotty girls, with the fish tattoos and the piercings in their nose and their tongue and all kinds of different areas. And it's just $8, Chinatown. So we ran around Chinatown, got my Chinese herbs, my bugs and sticks, and, my various Chinese teas and all that stuff. And then of course, Saturday was just, oh my word, was one of the greatest days ever. I mean, just one of the greatest days ever. It was after last week's just completely tragic loss. It was, evil was pervading the world. A clawed shadow of darkness was making its way across the planet as USC lost to the hated and just flat out evil UCLA Bruins. They were actually joking on the radio today that John Ireland, there's a sports radio show here called Mason in Ireland. And Mason is the USC guy, and he didn't go to USC, but he's the USC announcer, I guess, that does the USC Trojan talks and all that. And his partner is this guy Ireland, who I presume went to UCLA. And they were joking about the fact that he was the only rich white guy to, I think, have gone to UCLA. Because the joke is UCLA is University of Caucasians lost among Asians because there's no white people at UCLA. And they were joking about the fact that he was like one of the only white rich kids in Southern California to actually go to UCLA, because you would usually go to USC if you had any money or your father had a job. So after that horrible loss last week, we were going to face Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame was in the national championship conversation. Notre Dame was like ranked as high as, I think, 4th at one time. And then they had a bunch of injuries, and they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games. So Notre Dame was not so good. This is the first time in, I think, 14 years or something that USC and Notre Dame played each other where neither team has actually been ranked. And it was an early game. It was the first time in 14 years that we did not play Notre Dame at night, which was very strange, which means it was the primetime game actually back east. It was on at 3:30, actually on the East Coast. So this was the number one primetime game that everybody was watching. And Cody Kessler, who should win the Heisman Trophy. I mean, Cody Kessler is a fantastic quarterback, and I think he'll be not only in the running, but probably win the Heisman Trophy next year. It was just superb, and we tore Notre Dame to shreds. Now, here's the really cool part about this is that beforehand, now the entire game was not only sponsored by, but was also dedicated to Louis Zamperini. And Louis Zamperini is now going to be in the. Let me tell you about Louis Zamperini. Louis Zamperini they wrote a book about him called Unbroken. And his story has been around for a long time. I mean, it's been around since about 1952 or so, where they were talking as far back as then about doing a movie. He was called the Torrance Tornado, and he was a track and field star, and he enrolled at USC. And as a student at USC, he won an NCAA championship and title. He went to the 1932 Olympics, where he is the one that actually shook hands with Hitler, because Hitler refused to shake hands with Jesse Owens. So he actually shook hands with Hitler, won Olympic medals at the 1932 Berlin Olympics. Then, of course, the war broke out, where he was terrified of flying, but he actually became a bombardier in a B-24. And I'm just remembering the story off the top of my head. Became a bombardier in a B-24, even though he was terrified of flying. Flew something like 50 combat missions or so. And then his plane was shot down over the Pacific because they were outnumbered, and the Japanese Zeros. By the way, the Japanese Zeros were built by Hughes Aircraft. They were the design for them was Howard Hughes, and he tried to sell them to the Defense Department of the United States, and talked about how the wings zipped up and they could run on various types of alternative fuels. And by the way, the Japanese Zeros actually ran on a form of kerosene. It was really rice wine, is what it was. So because the Japanese had such a problem, actually it was the U.S. embargoes of oil on Japan that are what led to Pearl Harbor, what led to the Japanese declaring war on the United States, believing that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, had actually declared economic war on the Japanese by embargoing all the oil that was coming into their country. So they converted to rice wine, to a form of rice wine, sort of kerosene, if you will, like a grain alcohol, to run all their planes. So in the Pacific, when we would capture an island or a fuel depot or whatever, we couldn't use any of their fuel, because it was literally, it's like a rice burner, like a Suzuki motorcycle. And so Zamperini crashes into the Pacific, and he manages to get out. And actually, the only thing that saves him is, as the plane is sinking, his USC class ring allows him to actually punch the window. The ring actually saves his life, allows him to punch the window, and actually of the undercarriage of the bomber, allows him to break the window. And I think only 3 men. No, it was I think 3 men survive. And am I not saying his name correctly? All right, I'm sorry. It's Zamperini. I'm so sorry. It's Zamperini. It's Louis Zamperini. And Zamperini is he survives, and then a Japanese Zero machine guns his raft, and he and one other man survived 47 days at sea. And Zamperini they survived 47 days at sea, where they're picked up by the Japanese. They're then taken to a Japanese concentration camp, where he is savagely tortured by the Japanese. And one of the things you could say, and I know Douglas Dietrich talks a lot about this, all due respect to Douglas. What the hell was up with the Japanese after the war? I mean, with the Germans, we tried all their leaders for war crimes, just for starting a war, just for fighting a war. They were all tried for war crimes. We never signed a treaty of surrender with Germany. Germany is technically still part of the United States. Angela Merkel basically runs a student government in Germany. They can't do anything without the permission of the United States. Their military still occupies the country. Again, it's a military tribunal. A military tribunal runs Germany. But with Japan, we never persecuted or prosecuted any of them for war crimes. They were never held responsible for the horrible war crimes that occurred in their concentration camps, or the torture of U.S. prisoners. And by the way, there was no, as far as I can tell, as far as the concentration camps, or should I say the prisoner of war camps, where they had American soldiers or U.S. soldiers there, they didn't torture them. Russians, yeah, right. If you were Russian or Jewish, yeah, they did some medical experiments on you. There was no great love for the Slavs, as they called it. But the Japanese got away scot-free. They got to keep their emperor. Like, Hirohito had nothing to do with the Second World War. It would be the same thing, for example, if we went into Germany and said, well, Hitler was just the leader of the country. Okay, you can stay. And, all their leaders, they were just going to war. And Japan got off scot-free. We signed a treaty of surrender with the country, number one, even though they became a subsidiary S corp of the United States. They got to keep their emperor. And as far as I know, nobody had any responsibility whatsoever for what went down in the prisoner of war camps, where they regularly tortured U.S. and British soldiers. Anybody that ever saw a bridge on the River Kwai or whatever else. So Louis Zamperini then comes back to the United States, and it's an amazing story, because not only does he come back to America, but then he then carries the Olympic torch at the Winter Olympics in Japan as kind of an act of forgiveness against the Japanese. So called The Torrance Tornado, and a fantastic book called Unbroken, and the movie comes out, directed by Angelina Jolie, and the movie comes out on Christmas Day. So let me see. Do we meet Jack? Melissa would know this. So the entire halftime show was actually dedicated and brought to you by Universal Pictures or whatever, and was dedicated to Louis Zamperini. Now, Louis Zamperini also, not only was this movie coming out about him on Christmas Day, and not only is he going to be up for a bunch of Academy Awards, but he was also going to be the Grand Marshal for the Rose Parade coming up on coming up on January 1st, so the Rose Bowl. And he died about 3 months ago. I mean, just, he had, all this stuff was happening. He was 97, I think. And 97 years old. So how cool is this? Before the game, they have a huge stand for ESPN 710 Trojan Talk Sports Radio that's out in front of the peristyle. That's by we have these two naked statues, these headless naked statues of the perfect bodies of men and women, these nude statues, and they both have sashes on the male and the female Olympic statues, along with the peristyle, and you've got the Olympic torch that, of course, was there from 1936, and then again from 1980. And I actually went to the 1980 Olympics. I was at the opening closing ceremony. I was at I did a bunch of stuff for the Olympics when they were here. But they had sashes, actually, that said, on one side they said Torrance, on the other side they said Tornado. They were Louis Zamperini sashes. And on the stage for 710 ESPN, they were interviewing Jack O'Connor. And Jack O'Connor, and this is how weird this is, they had to find a kid from England, from like Hempstead, to play this quintessential American hero, because apparently we have nobody that can play. We have no Americans. We have nobody from the United States that can play an American hero. So they get a British guy, and they have to teach him how to speak the English language, literally, because he talks like, he's got like, hey, we'll clean your chimney today, or hanging out with Mary Poppins, going to go jump into a chalk painting and go jump on some carousel horses and race and have some lunch with penguins, right? So on 710 ESPN, they're interviewing up on the stage right there on the peristyle. They're interviewing Jack O'Connor, who's going to be the star of the movie, and will quite possibly be nominated for an Academy Award. And it was good fun, because then afterwards he came off the stage, and I had just read an article about him in Entertainment Weekly, where he's on the cover with Angelina Jolie. Entertainment Weekly if you get it, it's good fun. It's kind of an insider entertainment magazine.
What movie is this?
This is Unbroken is the name of the movie. It comes out Christmas Day. Okay, so anyway, so Jack O'Connor comes off the stage, and I say, hey man, I just want to say thank you so much for doing such an inspirational story, and thank you for taking on this role, and I know the physical challenges of it. And I just read this article about you and Angelina Jolie, and how difficult this movie was to make, and thank you so much for being you. And he's like, well, thank you very much. And I got a picture with him, and I gave him my card and said, I've got like the number one talk radio show on the number one talk radio show on the internet, so hopefully you can come on. So, who knows? I'll call his agent and see if we can get Jack O'Connor to come on the program. So there it is. So it's, and the other thing about Louis is that he sat where my seats are for the USC football games. He sat 4 rows down from us with his entire family, and we used to see him every Saturday every time there was a game. We would say hi to him and shake his hand. His whole family was there, and we'd go up and kind of joke around with him. So he was a fantastically wonderful, bright, brilliant guy who remind us of the greatest generation, who remind us of the real hardships that our parents and grandparents all went through with all of this. And the halftime show at the Coliseum was the USC marching band, the greatest marching band in the history of the universe. And they did this entire fantastic tribute to Louis Zamperini, and they had the song girls, and they dressed up in they had these great cute little skirts on, and they dressed up like 1940s wax, I guess you would say, and they did a whole dance routine to Bugle Boy of Company B, and they had Jack O'Connor out there with the rest of Louis' family, and the band did this fantastic formation where they spelled out the name Louis. And they did a thing with him where they formed the figure of a man running with a torch, and they showed scenes from the movie up on the screen. So so that was fantastic. And then after that, the coolest part is that we stomped Notre Dame. I mean, this you got to understand. Cody Kessler throws more passes against Notre Dame than ever, touchdown passes, 6 touchdown passes, which is more touchdown passes than Notre Dame has had scored against them in the 126 years that Notre Dame has been playing football. I mean, we pulled down their pants and spanked these guys with a belt. It was bad. And as a matter of fact, their quarterback that everybody thought was going to be up for the Heisman Trophy, they pulled him in the second quarter, and they put a guy named Malik Zaire in. If you want to know what happened to the Irish, they now have Malik Zaire as their quarterback, who apparently is like I don't know, what's a black Muslim guy named Zaire actually playing for the Fighting Irish, who are all Catholics, which it makes no sense to me. But he did well. He ran around and as a running quarterback, I think he ran for a touchdown and threw for a touchdown and actually pulled them out to, a not really respectable 14 points, but 49. And we could have, and believe me, if we put on our second string, pretty much, we had our third string quarterback in there in the last 6 minutes of the game. And even Brian Kelly said, well, I'd like to thank Steve Sarkisian for taking his foot off our neck. And by the way, a seventh touchdown was called back. It was debatable, but a seventh touchdown was called back because they claimed that he didn't control it in the end zone or something. So it should have been 7 touchdowns, and we could have scored 70 on these guys if we didn't take our foot off their neck. So the cool part about it is at the very end of the game, a group of the seniors, and this is weird because we're up quite a ways. We're up sort of by the where our seats are around about a 40-yard line, but they're way up at the edge. They had a bunch of the seniors actually come up because apparently their families sit right up behind us. And so a whole bunch of these seniors came up and they walked all the way up to the edge of the Coliseum to go see their families. And, we got to take pictures with these guys I'll put them up if you want to go to my Sean David Morton Facebook page. But, we'll put some pictures up, but we took pictures with them. We shook their hands and I said, you guys are heroes. And, thank you so much for everything else. I mean, these guys have been through these seniors, they've been through some stuff, man. I mean, when these horrible and completely undeserved and utterly unfair sanctions came down against USC. And when I say about unfair, University of South Carolina was found guilty of 28 years of academic infractions. And they got, 2-week suspension or something. I mean, a slap on the hand. The joke is that Ohio State is guilty of infractions, and Ohio State and Ohio of Miami is the ones that pay the price for this. But all these seniors came up, and so we got to hug them and shake their hands and just coming up off the field. So that was good fun. And I also went with a very good buddy of mine, Marco Alfredo. And he and his father are both from Ecuador. And his father had never seen anything like this before. His father had been a huge USC fan, watches the football, watches USC on the TV all the time, had never been to the Coliseum ever before. And to go to a USC Notre Dame game during the day, and by the way, it was 73 degrees while the whole rest of the country is freezing to death. He was just the whole time, he was like, oh my God, the Madre Dios is so amazing. So it was good fun. And then we went to Universal Studios afterwards and had some good Mexican food. And I've talked this whole hour. All right, we've got Benjamin Fulford coming up. We've got a whole list of dead bankers. Man, there's a lot of dead. All right, the moon's in Aries today. Welcome back to Strange Universe Radio. This is, of course, the Sean. How you doing? Who's your buddy? Who's your pal? Who's your lover? Who's your friend? You give us a call, actually, if you want, 347-688-2902, 347-688-2902. It is not that we don't take phone calls. It's just that when we open up the phones go crazy. And all right, there you go. Foo Fighters, brand new Foo Fighters for you. Today, the moon's in Aries. So, of course, when the moon's in Aries, as we all know, even Stephen Travesty is, of course, a wild, warlike, woolly Aries boy. So I let him pick the music. And he's restraining himself. So there's no Insane Clown Posse. There's no Megadeth. There's no Gyatso Frou or some weird, Japanese mango multi-tentacled porn band that he's listening to today.
Well, for one thing, the Insane Clown Posse, that was A, fairly tame. B, that was really just a suggestion for you. And C, Megadeth is also tame, comparatively speaking, to what I listen to.
So there you go. If you want to throw a pair of stonewashed jeans in the washing machine that is Steve's head, please be my guest. But he gets to pick the music today, so I got to deal with him whenever the moon's in Aries. He picks the music for which he will ultimately blamed. But Foo Fighters is pretty good. So and there's a brand new Foo Fighters out, and I think it's worth listening to. So we compromised on that one. All right, a lot of good stories for you. Thank you for listening to how my week was. Sunday was good fun too because I went out Sunday and we went out. Got a Christmas tree and got lights and new garlands and all kinds of stuff. And of course, the new crappy place that I live, we have no place to actually put it up. But that may change soon. Baby Center, and CENTRE, Baby Center website. And I finished with with the Louis story. So once again, Unbroken comes out Christmas Day. You should probably see it. It's the story of a true American hero. And of course, at the University of Southern California, we breed true American heroes. Hey, I could say one of our alumni has been on the moon. How about you? Yeah, Harvard and Yale with their stupid presidents and their Nobel Prize winners. Baby Centre, is C-E-N-T-R-E. We fought a war with the British so we could end words with E-R instead of R-E. Their website has, there's been a surge in Arabic names, and including Omar and Ali for boys, and Maryam and Noor for girls. But you ready for this? And this gives you an idea of where England is headed. And as my dear old Jewish stepfather, Frank Salomon, used to say, he would say, Shawnee boy, I think he picked up the Shawnee boy from my Irish grandmother. He said, if you want to see where the United States is going, you look at England. The British are way smarter than us. They're far more educated than we are. And they use England, and there's some 60 million poor experimental guinea pigs in Old Blighty, as they call it, as basically the experiment. I think they're maybe using the Australians now, because there's only 25 million of the Australians they can pick on. And the funny thing about Australia is the Australians don't do anything that the government says anyway, so it doesn't even matter what laws they pass. But he would always say, if you want to see what's going to happen to America, look at England. England is anywhere between 10 to 15 years ahead of us. So Mohammed has become the most popular name for baby boys in the United Kingdom. This is from the website Baby Center. And while Arabic names are on the rise, TV shows such as Game of Thrones have also inspired names for the next generation. So here's the list of the top 100 baby names of 2014. Mohammed, most popular baby name in England. It's risen 27 places from last year to claim the #1 spot for boys. Baby Names chart ranks the names chosen by 56,157 babycenter.co.uk members who gave birth in 2014. A surge in Arabic names generally, with Noor, N-U-R, a new entry in the girls' top 100, Noor, which just means night, actually, or dark, or black, jumping straight to number 29, and Miriam rising 59 places to number 35. Omar, Ali, and Ibrahim are all new to the boys' top 100. Sophia, top name for baby girls, mirroring its popularity in Baby Center's charts in the U.S., Brazil, Spain, and Russia last year. Lots of Sophias. But the biggest riser within the girls' top, and by the way, Sophia, I believe, means wisdom. There's a prophetess in Islam. This one girl. She could predict the future and apparently speak to God, but she couldn't drive a car. Because if she would drive a car, she would drive to degradation. She would drive to where the degradation is and commit the fornication. So she is only allowed to drive where there are no men, maybe in a mountain or in a parking lot somewhere. But the biggest riser within the girls' top 100 was Miriam, while the highest new entries were Noor, Amelia, and Gracie. And for baby boys, Teddy. There you go. Teddy was the biggest climber within the top 100. The highest new entries were Kyan and Jonathan. It's pretty interesting because in my book, Sands of Time, my lead character is Theodore Teddy. Sarah Redshaw, managing editor for Baby Center, said, quote, with the increase of Arabic names plus Arav, an Indian boy's name, the top 100 shows the ever-increasing diversity of the United Kingdom today. Unquote. Diversity, which is a code word for poverty and crime. The royal relegation continued with George falling a further 5 places. The name slipped out of the top 10 to number 13 shortly after the future king's birth last year. Other royal names, such as Harry and William, also fell in popularity this year. Redshaw said, parents have also been influenced by celebrity name choices. The Beckhams and Simon Cowell have been big influences this year. Eric, the name Simon Cowell chose for his son, increased by 314%. The names of David and Victoria Beckham's offspring have also prompted a trend among parents. Harper is a new entry in the top 100 this year, while Romeo is up 67%, and Cruz, C-R-U-Z, is up 400%. Cruz? You're really going to call your kid Cruz? Ariana entered the girls' top 100 names for the first time with singer Ariana Grande. I'm so fancy. Who is an idiot, who apparently wants to be dragged behind a car and raped by Eminem. Topping the charts this year from the Game of Thrones, the name Amelia was a new entry at number 53, with parents also registering names Daenerys and Tyrion this year. Of course, they were born of dragons mostly. The name Piper was up 267% thanks to the popular TV series Orange is the New Black. Yes, because I'm going to name my daughter after a girl who becomes a lesbian and goes to jail. Breaking Bad also continued to influence as Skyler, Jesse, and Walter all increased in popularity. 1960s, and we had lots of Walters. We had Walter Knott, we had Walt Disney. But Mrs. Redshaw added, parents are wary of names associated with celebrities who exhibit bad behavior. Pop singer Miley Cyrus being a prime example. The name Miley has completely fallen out of the top 100, as have Amy and Nick, following the release of the mystery thriller book and the movie Gone Girl. Popular names from the 70s seem to be making a comeback, with Emma, one of my favorite names, Sarah, and Maria up 10, 32, and 12 places. Angela, Joanne, Claire, and Karen have also increased in popularity, and John has made it into the top 100 again. Choosing an unusual baby name is also on the rise, because this year's more creative baby names for girls included Wren, London, Phoenix, Logan, Indigo, Genesis, and Blue, inspired by Beyonce's daughter, Blue Ivy. Among the more inventive names for boys were Prince. These are names you give a cat or a dog. Prince, King, Jr., Hendrix, Bratson, and Apollo, which is the name of Gwen Stefani's sons. So here's the top 10 girls' names. Number 1, in descending order. Number 10, Chloe. Number 9, Sophia. Sophie. Number 8, Ava. Number 7, Isabel. Number 6, Isla. Number 5, Amelia. Number 4, Olivia. Number 3, Lily. Number 2, Emily. And the number 1 baby girl name is Sophia. Top 10 boys' names. Ethan, number 10. 9 is James. 8 is Joshua. 7 is Harry. 6 is Charlie. 5 is Jacob. 4 is Noah. 3 is Jack. 2 is Oliver. And the number 1 baby name is Mohammed. Oh, good on you, England. You're completely doomed. All right. Okay. Now, let me see where I'm at here. Benjamin Fulford. Let's talk about him for a second. Ben Fulford has a brand new post out. He usually comes out with something on his blog every Monday. Although he says 12:02. Oh, he must have just posted this because it's tomorrow in Japan. So here it is. Over 20 national governments to be overthrown as cabal takedown begins, CIA sources say, by Benjamin Fulford. All right, so here he is. Here's Benjamin Fulford. Once again, the opinions expressed by Benjamin Fulford, not necessarily those of Strange Universe Radio or Revolution Radio. The satanic Zionist cabal that seized power in the West is about to be taken down, and the result will be the toppling of over 20 governments, including those of the United States, really, top of the United States, Japan, and the UK, CIA, Pentagon, and MI6 sources say. I think he's talking about sources within these. Many CIA and Pentagon officers have gone into bunkers in preparation for battle with the cabal mercenary armies, the CIA and Pentagon sources say. The firing of U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel last week, and Hagel was pressured out, basically, because he did not want to put boots on the ground in a simian orgy in a tubular barrel-like object to cost American lives. But anyway, Chuck Hagel said last week was the trigger event, the sources said. The fact the 2 main cabal candidates to replace him refused the job indicates something is definitely going on at high levels of the military-industrial complex. Wow. As one source put it, using more direct language, the fecal matter is about to encounter the ventilator. Very good. Love that one. Meanwhile, U.S. President and illegal alien Barack Obama, he didn't say that. I'm sorry. I'm quoting Ben Fulford now. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama tried and failed last week to use staged race riots around the country as an excuse to use Homeland Security to enforce martial law on behalf of the cabal. Many of the U.S. military are confused and unsure of what to do because they've been heavily indoctrinated into blindly following orders and accepting civilian control. The first thing that needs to be drilled into the heads of these fence-sitters is that they are disobeying their oath and therefore their orders by allowing the Constitution of the United States to be shredded by fascists. The second thing that must be explained to them is that civilians are not in charge. Gangsters are. There's also a lot of confusion even at high levels of the CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies about the consequences of the bankruptcy of the U.S. corporate government. The big point they need to keep in mind is that finance is the psychological process of deciding what humans do in the future. Even if the U.S. financial system collapses, nothing in the real world will change. No houses, lands, factories, or people will vanish just because trillions of debt slavery instruments mislabeled as U.S. dollars are deleted from bank computers. The only risk of chaos would come from a failure by the military-industrial complex to proactively shut down the system and reboot it with a I always have a problem with this word, meritocratically controlled replacement. In other words, something based on merit. Controlled replacement run by and for the people. Also, the U.S. military need to know if they do not act against the Satanists in Washington and Wall Street, then a tsunami will hit the U.S. East Coast, forcing an evacuation of New York City, the entire state of Florida, and many other places, White Dragon Society sources say. Okay, now there's we're going to talk about this for just a second because there is a very real possibility. Just to interrupt what Fulford is saying here for just a moment. We'll go on to the rest of his comments. But the sword of Damocles that has been hanging over the East Coast for years is a volcano in the Canary Islands on the island of Las Palmas. And Las Palmas, if this volcano was to blow, and if there were and if this island was to split in half, the challenge would be is that you might quite possibly have you could have a 300 to 1,000 foot tidal wave that would actually then hit a huge tidal wave, or a tsunami, if you will, that would actually hit the East Coast of the United States. And it would hit the East Coast within 6 to 8 hours or so, because half of this mountain would actually, of this entire island would then fall into the ocean. Now, one of the thing also, and I've talked about this and I've written about it, is that back when I was teaching my remote viewing classes, and I will get back to teaching them, by the way. Apparently in the coming year, there's so many people that want me to do a class in Vegas. And it'd be fun because we're going to do associative remote viewing, and I'll teach you how to, do roulette wheels and it's how I made my living for quite a while, actually, as a quote professional gambler, unquote. But we did remote viewings. This is back when I was teaching classes in New York in 94, 95, 96. And I've said this once and I've said it again, is that I just did a game, if you will, where I took that class and I projected them forward to the year 2015. I thought 2015 was fun because in the movie Back to the Future, Marty McFly actually travels, and Doc Brown actually traveled to the year 2015, where Biff has gotten hold of a sports almanac and goes into the future and marries his mom and runs a casino and runs the world, and basically Biff becomes Donald Trump. And I'm convinced that Donald Trump got a hold of a sports almanac, because other than that, he's an idiot. But so an imbecile, I tell you. Come on, how many talk radio shows do you hear the word imbecile that much? So, and all of New York was flooded. All of New York was flooded. A lot of people have been evacuated out to New Jersey. New York had been completely flooded. Half of it was mostly underwater. So here's what's interesting, is that Fogo, F-O-G-O, volcano erupts after 20 years of sleep, and evacuations are in progress on the Cape Verde Islands. Now, Fogo is a volcano in the Cape Verde archipelago located off the coast of West Africa, and it started erupting around 11 UTC on Sunday, November 23rd, after almost 20 years of a calm period. The eruption prompted the nation's prime minister, Jose Maria Neves, to call for the evacuation of Chadas Calderias on the slopes of the volcano. Now, Toulouse, VAAC, has set aviation color code to red. Neves said in yesterday's statement that the eruption is at the same place where the last eruption occurred in 1995, and that it seems much stronger. He explained that meteorological and geophysical services have been warning that seismic activity has intensified a few days before the eruption started. Now, according to data received, the eruption is comparable or stronger to that of the 1951 volcanic eruption, and things could further deteriorate, Neves said. Now, once again, and there's all kinds of pictures and all that, but you can look this up. But the island of Fogo consists of a single massive stratovolcano that is the most prominent of the Cape Verde Islands. The roughly circular 25-kilometer-wide island is truncated by a large 9-kilometer-wide caldera that is breached to the east and has a head wall 1 kilometer high. The caldera is located asymmetrically northeast of the center of the island and was formed as a result of massive lateral collapse of the ancestral Monte Amarillo edifice. Now, a very youthful, steep-sided central cone, Pico, rises more than 1 kilometer above the caldera floor to about 100 meters above the caldera rim, forming the 2,829-meter high point of the island. Now, Pico is capped by a 500-meter-wide, 150-meter summit crater, and this was apparently in almost continuous activity from the time of the Portuguese settlement in 1500 AD until around 1760. And later historical lava flows, some from the vents of the caldera floor, reached the eastern coast below the breached caldera. Now, once again, this is near Las Palmas and Cape Verde, but this is in that same sort of chain there. But whether this could happen, whether something could happen with this, but anyway. So to continue, I'm just saying that this is the sword of Damocles that's hanging over the head of the United States. Now, about 5 years ago, the U.S. military actually went out and said, we need to blow up this island. And thousands of very small mini quakes begin to occur on the leeward side of the island. In other words, the island that's actually facing Africa, so that if the other side falls into the ocean, it would only take out Africa. And of course, the United States doesn't play nice with other countries. We don't care who dies as long as it's not us. So here he says, Fulford goes on to say the military needs to make contingency plans ASAP if they are to avoid a humanitarian crisis caused by the tsunami. And speaking about tsunamis, a guilty verdict was reached against UK lawyer Michael Shrimpton last week on charges that he made a false claim of a nuclear threat to the 2012 UK Olympics. However, Shrimpton plans to appeal to a higher court, and this time MI6 and MI5 intelligence officers have now promised to help Shrimpton with his case. Furthermore, evidence given at the trial that the March 11th, the 3/11 tsunami was a man-made tsunami and nuclear terror attack has attracted a high level of interest, MI5 sources say. The UK External Intelligence Agency, MI6, in other words, the MI5 is like their FBI, MI6, or Military Intelligence 6, is their CIA. That's who James Bond works for with the famed 00 license to kill sector and all that. But they're saying MI6 has asked its counterparts in the U.S. and Japanese intelligence for detailed evidence about the 3/11 attack. In addition, Israeli Mossad intelligence sources are also investigating allegations that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was one of the chief planners of that attack, the MI5 source says. A powerful faction in Israel has finally figured out that many so-called Jews and Christians and Muslims are actually Satan-worshipping Hyksos who view the Jews as their slaves. That is one reason why the situation in Israel and the Middle East is reaching a boiling point. Okay. The big story is that NATO member Turkey, Iran, and the Gulf oil monarchies are on a war path against cabal interests in the region. The situation is chaotic to say the least. The so-called ISIS is run by Israel to discredit Muslims and turn world public opinion against the Turkish and Iranian-led move to create an Islamic federal superstate. Remember, real Muslims do not commit atrocities of the sort being attributed to ISIS. Only the Hyksos do this. All right, this is Ben's new code word here. And since ISIS is being attacked by the Pentagon and the British, it means these countries are actually fighting Israel, or to put it more accurately, the Hyksos, Zionist Satan worshippers who control the real power of that country. Okay, he's launched into a whole series of semantics that make no sense to me whatsoever. All right, this is Sean David Morton. And there we go. That's, wow. That's Russell Brand. No wonder Katy Perry divorced him. Because Katy Perry wants to be a little Illuminati superstar, and Russell Brand as using comedy. Maybe this is the reason why they're bumping off all these comedians.
Yeah, his horse wasn't dark enough for her.
Yeah, I was going to say yeah. Well, he actually mentions Katy Perry in Super Bowl halftime shows as part of the whole Illuminati aspect. It's All right, we have a caller. Let me just finish up with what Ben Fulford is talking about. Again, Ben Fulford speaks in this sort of crypto knee-jerk buzzword kind of weird thing. You know, the Zionists. I have yet to figure out really what that means. But he's talking about the Hyksos, where he says that the Turkish and Iranian-led move to create an Islamic federal superstate. Remember, the real Muslims do not commit atrocities of the sort being attributed to ISIS. Only the Hyksos do this. Now, again, yes, Muslims do commit these kind of atrocities. We've been basically at war with Islam since, 6th, maybe 7th century or so. There was a brief period of time, actually about 300 years, where the Caliphate of Damascus was formed out of Cordoba, Spain, interestingly enough, in which the Muslims were actually finally driven out by Charles the Hammer Martel. I wrote a whole book about this, by the way, called The Dark Prophet, Veil of the Antichrist. Actually, if you want to get my books, we have all the books now. If you want to go on strangeuniverseradio.com, strangeuniverseradio.com, you can actually get my books there. And actually, it's The Dark Prophet. Actually, the first book is called Black Seraph, and I'm actually just finishing up the screenplay for that. And we'll see about what happens there. And the second book is Veil of the Antichrist, where I predicted all the stuff that was going to be going on in the Middle East. Now, if you go to Egypt, one of the things that you'll find is that it was apparently the pharaohs and the Egyptians themselves seemed to be a red-skinned copper race, very much like the Native American Indians are. And there was a white race that was enslaved by them, which were called the Hyksos. And you actually can see where the Hyksos is, and the story is that maybe the Hyksos were the ones that the Israelites actually came out of. The Hyksos were somehow maybe the descendants of Abraham and all of this. So anyway, so I'm not exactly sure what he's alluding to, but he says since ISIS is being attacked by the Pentagon and the British, it means these countries are actually fighting Israel, or to put it more accurately, the Hyksos Zionist. Zionist Satan worshippers who control the real power in that country. There's a paragraph here that makes no sense to me. Because again, if the head of ISIS is Simon Shimon, you know, Michael Jackson sang about him, Shimon, who is Shimon anyway? If Simon Shimon is the head of ISIS, and Simon Shimon, and most of the evidence we have is that Simon Shimon is very much an agent for the Mossad, and it seems as though what ISIS is doing is not only committing all these horrible crimes in order to get people to once again come in against Islam, because Israel needs people to hate Islam. They've spent trillions of dollars creating an informational propaganda matrix for everybody to despise Islam. And quite frankly, it's pretty easy to do. There's really nothing about Islam that's really that lovable, to tell you the truth. The way they treat their women, the way they treat horses well. They treat horses better than women, actually. But if Shimon is, the whole point of this is to bring the ire of the West and the United States in to once again attack people on the behalf of Israel, and to basically carve out a pipeline through Syria so the Saudi Arabians can then put their pipeline up into France so they can compete with the Russians for oil. So here's the rest of what he says. Furthermore, NATO airplanes are flying out of Turkey to make raids on the Zionist mercenary armies fighting in the Ukraine. I have no idea what this Zionist word is. He says basically it's U.S. forces that have it's the United States that's taken over the Ukraine. This is a CIA-led coup of the Ukraine. If this information seems too much out of line with what you read in the cabal propaganda media, take note of the fact that Russian President Vladimir Putin is in Turkey this week to seal a big energy alliance with Turkey. And this is hardly the sort of thing that would be going on if Turkish-based NATO planes were attacking Russian allies in the East Ukraine. People who still have trouble wrapping their heads around this situation should take note of the fact that only Canada, the United States, and the Ukraine voted against a Russian-sponsored UN resolution condemning, quote, glorification of Nazism and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. So we have actually, the United States, with the help of Canada and Israel, has actually put a skinhead Nazi government into Ukraine. If African-American U.S. President Barack Obama was really in charge, it is hard to imagine him ordering the State Department to vote against this particular resolution. Oh, nay, nay, I say. Au contraire, mon frere. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper, for his part, just signed his own inevitable arrest warrant by ordering the Canadian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to vote against that resolution. The vote was a wake-up call for the U.S. and Canadian Armed Forces, and one of the reasons for the ouster of Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel in an ongoing move to remove the Zionists who control Washington, D.C. and Wall Street, but not the Pentagon. In Asia, meanwhile, the battle against the Zionist cabal is intensifying. In China, a major meeting of all Chinese senior diplomats was convened to discuss the ongoing changes in the world power structure. Chinese President Xi Jinping told the diplomats that, quote, we should be keenly aware of the protracted nature of the contest over the international order. On the other hand, we need to recognize that the direction of reform of the international system will remain unchanged. Those words, in other words, the cabal is putting up stubborn resistance but will inevitably lose. That's what the president of China is saying. In Japan, an intense media campaign against cabal slave Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is rapidly eroding his popularity in opinion polls. The Kabbalists, for their part, are using Rockefeller Bush slave Sadayuki Sakikibara, head of the Kedren business lobby, to try to keep Abe in power, according to Japanese right-wing sources. That is why Sakikibara is a high-priority target, they say. But if the Kabbalists lose their ability to use Abe to loot Japan, the Bush-Rockefeller cabal control the Federal Reserve Board, IMF, UN, and the World Bank will implode a lot sooner than would otherwise be the case. Even if they keep control of Japan, though, they are mathematically doomed anyway. The simple fact is that even if they control vast numbers inside of bank computers, they do not control most of the real world. Speaking about vast numbers inside bank computers, sources at the P2 Freemason Lodge last week sent this writer information that can only be classified as X-Files type stuff. Ooh, here's the good stuff. Here we go. Quote, some bank computers are now free-willed sentient beings operating independently of central bank computers. They think like the Mother Earth and are acting on behalf of the planetary consciousness and genetic entities. The P2 say the sentient computers are allocating funds to worthy individuals and organizations while cutting off finances to multinationals and individuals who, quote, want to impoverish and destroy the Mother Earth and its inhabitants, animals, vegetables, minerals, etc., unquote. I'm going to let that one sink in. Free-willed sentient computers. So kind of the opposite of Skynet, if you will. Kind of a Mother Earth net. Furthermore, Fulford says, the P2 say, quote, even special snowfall and special snowflakes give proof of the places where this is happening and will happen. Unquote. That is pretty funky stuff, but remember that an unusual snowstorm stopped the rioting in Ferguson, and a record cold front hit the U.S. as soon as Barack Obama started spouting global warming lines. Yeah, oh, it's getting so warm. Remember also all those Category 6 typhoons that mysteriously turned into minor storms before they hit Japan. Also on the X-Files ledger last week were a series of strange, unexplained explosions heard all over the UK. Loud bangs heard. Britain Twitter bombarded reports mysterious noises. Military denies that RAF jets caused any of them. In addition, a major paper in the UK reported that people had been seen working on Mars in 1979 when the Viking lander was supposed to have landed there. Oh, this is okay. I gotta check this out. Hold on, stand by 1 second. I know Heather's waiting, but hold on 1 second. Okay, here we go. I saw men walking on Mars in 1979. This is from Mail Online. Conspiracy forums have been ablaze this week after a lady claiming to be a former NASA employee said she saw humans on Mars. The woman named Jackie called into American radio station. Oh, really? Okay. All right. She called into Coast to Coast AM with a confession that she had witnessed suited men running on the planet Mars in 1979. Well, if it's on Coast to Coast, it's got to be true. Jackie said she was working as part of a downstairs team downloading telemetry from the Viking lander, which, by the way, was put together by TRW, which is the company that my dad was vice president for, when she saw humans via live feed. I wonder if you could solve a 27-year-old mystery for me, she asked the presenter. That old Viking rover was running around. Then I saw two men in spacesuits, not the bulky suits we normally use, but they looked protective. They came over the horizon walking to the Viking Explorer. NASA has not corroborated the story, but this hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from claiming it as evidence for a secret space program. According to Jackie, 6 other NASA workers saw the 2 human beings walking on the red planet's surface. We ran upstairs, but they locked the door and taped paper over the window so we couldn't see. My question is, were they our guys? The Viking Mars mission was performed by 2 spacecraft, Viking 1 and Viking 2, launched within a couple of weeks of each other in the 1970s. Each spacecraft consisted of an orbiter and a lander, which traveled attached together for nearly a year to reach Mars. The orbiters then began taking pictures of the Martian surface, from which landing site was selected. The landers then separated from the orbiters and soft landed. Once again, let me see. Earlier this week, physicist Dr. John Brandenburg said he believes an ancient civilization on Mars was wiped out by a nuclear attack from another alien race. Dr. Brandenburg said, and by the way, that's the story in the Billy Meyer UFO aspect, that there was a war between the planet that was Marduk, I guess, excuse me, which later became the asteroid belt, and Mars. Brandenburg says ancient Martians known as Sidonians and Utopians were massacred in the attack, and evidence of the genocide can still be seen today. Back in 2011, the scientists first postulated that the red color of Mars could have been due to a naturally occurring thermonuclear explosion. He says the Martian surface is covered with a thin layer of radioactive substances, including uranium, thorium, and radioactive potassium. And this pattern radiates from a hotspot on Mars, he told Fox News. A nuclear explosion could have sent debris all around the planet, but since then, he's advanced this theory to the level that he now no longer thinks it was a naturally occurring explosion, but rather one planned by an intelligent alien race. According to Vice, the conclusion of the latest paper says that nuclear isotopes in the atmosphere resembling hydrogen bomb tests may present an example of civilization wiped out by a nuclear attack from space. Anyway, the orbiters continued imaging, and between Viking 1 and Viking 2, imaged the entire planet at what was then high resolution. Although no traces of life were found, Viking found all elements essential to life, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, were present on Mars. There were a few problems with Jackie's testimony. Nigel Watson, UFO expert and author of the book Haynes, UFO Investigations Manual, told Mail Online. Firstly, the Viking landing craft did not send a live TV feed back to Earth, and as its name suggests, it simply landed on the Martian surface. It did not have wheels like the latest Curiosity craft. Her grasp of technological terms is hazy, and of course, by remaining anonymous, it is virtually impossible to know if she really worked for NASA. The story does, however, strike a note with conspiracy theorists who believe that NASA and other human agencies have secretly visited Mars and established colonies there. Other conspiracy theorists who believe the moon landings were fake note that Jackie might have inadvertently seen the fakery behind the Viking mission, said Mr. Watson. Officially, the 2 Viking landing craft touched down on Mars in 1976, but according to the Viewpoint, they were set up at a remote desert location, and Jackie accidentally saw a feed revealing the fakery. The missions are fake to hide the real activity going on in outer space, which could include collaborating with aliens who already live on Mars, unquote. Jackie's claim follows a similar bizarre theory by physicist John Brandenburg, who believes the ancient civilization was wiped out by a nuclear attack. And I just read you that whole part there. So there you go. Last but not least, Ben Fulford says this sort of report, here he says, this sort of report is standard fare for the internet, but when so-called mainstream newspapers report it, it could be a sign that some sort of disclosure may be imminent. So there it is. There's Ben Fulford. Okay, we still have Heather online with us? Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Wow, you sound so clear. You sound like you're in the next room. Maybe you are.
I am.
What's up, Heather? How are you? Thanks for calling.
I'm fine. You're
what's on your
welcome.
mind?
Well, I figured since you were into science and scientist stuff, I put that link there, and there's something interesting about you were saying about how the country, there's some kind of conservation efforts being done, and it's really successful that they're saving energy. But what I'm thinking is that they're harnessing jinn energy, because I've kind of had a personal experience that would validate that. And in Phoenix, there's the Islamic Community Center. It's right by my house. It's across the alley from my house. And for the last, let's say, 5 years, they've had this light that shines out, this green light that shines out every night. It never goes off. You can't see it during the day. And they just, that community center 3 weeks ago had just won the award from Salt River Project for the most amazing energy conservation ever in the history of businesses or something like that. So I'm wondering if you know about this, or if you have heard of Sultan Bashiruddin Mahmud.
Wow, no. Sultan Bashiruddin Mahmud?
Bashiruddin Mahmud. He was an Islamic scholar, and he kind of, I think, is the one who brought everybody into this this kind of energy, or whatever energy that they're using for, as opposed to the kind that we use off of water and our systems that we currently are using.
No idea. I'm utterly clueless. But if you want to enlighten me, well,
you're better. You're better at reading. This started, I think, in 2001, and about the jinn energy, and it's when the Bush was in administration, and yeah, we're going to break. Is that a break? No. Oh, I thought we were going to break.
No,
are you playing the guitar?
No, it's Atlas would drop the world for a chance to shake my hand. All right, welcome back. All right, I finally made some sense out of the nonsensical to my queen of the non sequitur. Every time Heather calls, I always feel like she's handing me a book and I'm opening it at page 187. And I'm like, what? So here she is. So this is actually, there's a couple of interesting blurbs that actually came off. Let me see where what the source was. This is from Secrecy News. This is from back in October of 2001, actually. This is really old. So, for example, here it says a leading Pakistani. This is once again. This is from Secrecy News from 2001. Did you actually look at the date on this before you sent it to me?
Yes, I did, and the reason I thought it was relevant is because if you think about how much things have progressed over the time and where that's led to now, right. in retrospect, yeah.
Okay, so for example, okay, so here it is. A leading Pakistani nuclear scientist who was questioned by the Pakistani government last week. Now, this is their leading nuclear scientist, by the way. Just to give you an idea about Pakistan. Pakistan, a country that can't feed itself, but apparently managed to develop a nuclear bomb. He was questioned by the Pakistani government last week concerning his ties to the Taliban, and is known as a proponent of what he calls Islamic science, which is a weird hybrid of scientific terminology and basically Islamic myth and lore. His name is Sultan Bashiruddin Mahmud, and he's a pioneer of the development of nuclear energy in Pakistan. But in 1980, as a senior director of the Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission, he, quote, recommended that jinns, or genies, being fiery creatures, ought to be tapped as a free source of energy. By this means, a final solution to Pakistan's energy problems will be found. The episode was recounted in a Pakistani physicist, Pervez Khudhway, in his enlightening book, Islam and Science, Religious Orthodoxy, and the Battle for Rationality by Zed Books. And in a Wall Street Journal article on Islamic scientists, which was September 13th of 1988, Mahmud noted that King Solomon had harnessed energy from genies. Quote, I think that if we develop our souls, we can develop communication with them, he said. While the notion of jinn or genie energy is ridiculous, even in Pakistan, there are no jinn engines. Ridicule is completely beside the point. A more important point is that influential figures of the Islamic world are devoted to a view of reality that cannot be readily reconciled with conventional Western thought. This is a translation problem that cannot be solved with dictionaries. The detention of Bashiruddin Mahmud, which is expected to be temporary, was reported to the Pakistani Observer in Islamabad on October 25th. So, see, nuclear scientists picked up by agencies. So again, he's a nuclear scientist who believes that if you have a genie, of course, you know, the genie that was found by Tony that Roger was always wanting to borrow. She was pretty powerful. I could see if you had a genie like that. Wow. Especially hot in the, little pantaloon pants that look like Barbara Eden. Anyway, so there it is. Is there anything you want to talk? Anything else? Actually, the other thing that you sent me here, Heather, is actually very, very interesting. Heather sent me a quick clip here, which I thought was, I just want to read this to you just to give you an idea of where the future is heading. The godfather of the European Union, Richard Coudenhove Kalergi, he published a plan for a united era, the ethnocide of the white people or Europeans. The encouragement of mass non-white immigration was central to the plot, and since then an unholy alliance of leftists, capitalists, and Zionist supremacists have all schemed to promote immigration, a miscegenation with a deliberate aim of breeding Europeans out of existence in their own homelands. As resistance to this human genetic modification industry grows, the elite comes up with new ways to camouflage their project. They said that the immigrant, now they used the word Pauls, P-A-U-L-S. The immigrant Pauls were temporary guest workers. Then they said it was a multiracial experiment, and subsequently the non-Adamic bloodlines were refugees. This was their answer to the shrinking population. There are evidently different excuses and different lies. This is probably the biggest genocide in human history, the final solution of the indigenous European Christian problem for the New World leaders. In 1950, the white race was 30% of the global population. Today, it is less than 16%. The UN estimates that by 2050, the European race of white people will be 10%, and the growth of population is being driven by African and Asians, while the Adamic races decline. And in 1950, white people in the USA were the majority of the population, but today are statistically the minority. Quote, there are signs that Allah grant Islam victory in Europe without swords, without guns, without conquest. The 50 million Muslims of Europe will turn Europe into a Muslim country within decades. This was a speech by Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, April 10th, 2006.
Let us know, because I don't like the fact that this green light that is always my beacon in the darkness is out.
And where was this green light coming from?
The top of the tower of the mosque at the Phoenix Islamic Community Center.
The Phoenix Islamic Community, and the green light went out.
It's gone. But I saw it when it went in, and it was like Jinn energy entered into it. They must have summoned it. It kind of looked like a falling star, I thought. But then it went inside the building and lit up the windows. So, yeah.
So you think that the light atop of the mosque near your house is being powered by a genie?
It was, but for the last 2 days it's been out, and I'm very displaced by that.
Huh.
And
well, maybe
it just so happens that they just won that energy award, so maybe they think that someone might be on to them, so they had to put it in a bottle and put it somewhere else. I don't know. Or maybe Roger borrowed genie from Tony for a couple of days, like he was always asking. Who knows? Right.
Roger was always, Tony, can I borrow genie? I need to learn how to speak Swahili. Could you? Oh my God! We used to sit around. All the astronauts at my house we used to watch that show all the time. Gus Grissom, you think that's the funniest show ever? He's like, F&A, Bubba. Oh, that's funny. So it's very funny stuff. Okay, well, thank you so much. You want to just hang out with us here for a little bit?
Yeah, please.
All right, just hang out. Okay, so here's some computer news for you. Pizza Hut wants to help you skip your super ego middleman and just let your id order that triple cheese bacon pepperoni pie directly. Oh. Its subconscious menu uses Tobii's eye tracking tech. T-O-B-I-I. They use eye tracking tech to figure out which of 20 different ingredients you're looking at on a screen. It then takes all of 3 seconds to identify the pizza that you really want based on which thing on the screen you looked at the longest. Pizza Hut says its subconscious menu is still in trials, and after testing to a 98% success rate, it may eventually appear in restaurants. So they have pictures of weird stuff on here. Tomatoes, corn, lettuce, onions, pepperoni, shrimp, olives, cheese, meat, sauce, all kinds of things. So I guess if you just focus on one particular thing, it lets you do that. But there's all kinds of weird computer stuff out there it's real. I mean, for example, chatty robots in human form have started selling coffee machines to customers in Japan as of today, with their makers claiming that they can understand 80% of the conversations, along with being able to play games with customers and answer questions. The robot, which debuted at a promotional event on Monday, was called Pepper and belonged to Nestle Japan Limited as part of an innovative new sales technique for its Japanese stores. It has a smiling human face and an interactive tablet mounted on its chest. By simply answering my questions, I can tell which coffee machine is perfect for you. The 127, this thing's about 5 feet tall, but people stated with confidence at the event that held at Big Camera's Yukichiro store in Tokyo, it is Pepper's job to welcome customers at electronics stores, to answer customer questions about coffee machines, and aid them in selecting the one that they want the most. How do you enjoy coffee? Number 1, an eye-opener coffee. Number 2, a post-meal cup of coffee. Pepper asked a Japanese TV personality. And the robot's able to attempt forms of interaction not solely focused on coffee machine purposes, and is able to play games with and quizzes with the customers. Pepper's creators claim that the bot can understand 80% conversation. Currently, it's able to converse in Japanese only. However, it is always learning, and its makers say that it can develop its abilities through listening. Pepper Robot started work at 4 different stores Monday, and its design was unveiled in June. So there's a Pepper Robot that will sell you a coffee machine. Meanwhile, a cyber ring has stolen secrets from gaming U.S. stocks called FireEye, interesting enough. And security researchers say that they've uncovered a cyber espionage ring that's focused on stealing corporate secrets for the purpose of gaming the stock market in an operation that has comprised sensitive data about dozens of publicly held companies. Cybersecurity firm FireEye, Inc., which disclosed the operation on Monday, said that since the middle of last year, the group has attacked email accounts at more than 100 firms, most of them pharmaceutical and healthcare companies. And victims also include firms in other sectors, as well as corporate advisors, including investment bankers, attorneys, and investor relation firms. The cybersecurity firm declined to identify the victims. It said it did not know whether any trades were actually made based on the stolen data. Still, FireEye threat intelligence manager Jen Whedon said that the hackers only targeted people with access to highly insider data that could be used to profit on trades before that data was made public. And they sought data that included drafts of U.S. Security and Exchange Commission filings, documents on merger activity, discussions of legal cases, board planning documents, and medical research results. They are pursuing sensitive information that would give them privileged insight into stock market dynamics. So in that case, and then you turn to Amazon, which is now unveiling an army of robots to deal with the Christmas surge. So Amazon.com has now installed 15,000 robots across 10 U.S. warehouses in an effort to cut operating costs and get packages out the door more quickly in the run-up to Christmas. So the orange robots, which scoot around the floor on wheels, show how Amazon has adopted technology developed by Kiva Systems, a robotics company that it bought for $775 million in 2012. The robots are designed to help the leading U.S. online retailer speed the time it takes to deliver items to customers and better compete with brick-and-mortar stores where the bulk of Americans still do their shopping. The robots also may help Amazon avoid the mishaps of last year's holiday season when a surge of packages overwhelmed shipping and logistics company UPS and delayed the arrival of Christmas presents around the globe. Amazon offered shipping refunds and $20 gift cards to compensate its customers. So please take notes. First, you see in the news how there's a labor dispute with workers in a corporation. Then you see why the corporation was treating those workers so poorly. I mean, are the workers at McDonald's taking note? Walmart workers? Is your corporation starting to treat you way worse than they did before? Well, guess what? Like the Amazon manager said, the robots are here to help the human workers, not replace them. Now we just need fewer people. Duh. So Janney Capital Markets, by the way, has estimated that a broad implementation of Kiva's technology on a scale at the time only 10,000 bots could save the company now $400 million to $900 million per year, now cutting Amazon's cost of sorting, picking, boxing by 40%, So how do you think Amazon's saving all that money? Are they creating magic pixie dust? Because Amazon could pay for its whole purchase of Kiva in 1 year by cost savings. Because basically, people are just so fooked. You're just completely fooked. Back to McDonald's, if it's automated and there's security in place, just to say goodbye to everybody with a pour of coffee for my fallen homies there. And just so you know that the Cybernet, Skynet is here. Funded by the Pentagon's research arm, a robot inspired by the world's fastest animal is being developed to run and jump with unprecedented robotic balance and instincts. So if you saw Transformers, it really is here. With all the aim of using it in hostile environments for search and rescue missions. They always tell you search and rescue right until it kills somebody. It's a robot cheetah, and it's evolved thanks to researchers at MIT. After 5 years of rigorous testing and ingenious uses of existing technology, MIT's cheetah, which runs on batteries to achieve speeds over 10 miles per hour, jumps as high as 16 inches, gallops of at least 15 minutes, thank you, runs on 12 lightweight motors supplied by electric power, uses an algorithm that decides the precise amount of force a leg should exert while maneuvering. An internal computer sifts the data from the robot's many sensors and then commands the motors in accordance. This is kind of a Ferrari in the robotics world, like we have to put all the expensive components and make it really that instinctive, said Sang-Bai Kim, MIT professor and leader of the school's biomimetic robots lab, said that's the only way to get to that speed. Kim said the robot cheetah was developed using designs of other technologies, from all-terrain wheelchairs and vehicles that can traverse rough ground to Xbox controllers used for maneuvering. And he said the researchers hope the 70-pound cheetah will eventually be able to execute search and rescue missions or enter environments that humans couldn't. In the next 10 years, our goal is we're trying to make this robot to save lives. Each cheetah leg is powered by 3 motors that can generate much force even at low speeds. When the robot is running at every step, we calculate the approximate amount of the force of the leg so that the robot can balance itself, said MIT researcher Ha-Won Park. Researchers hope continued improvement of the current model, including additional sensors, will mean the robot can eventually move autonomously. But the MIT robot is reminiscent of similar projects developed by Boston Dynamics, including another cheetah that has hit running speeds of over 28 miles per hour on a treadmill while connected to a power source. But Boston Dynamics also has an untethered quadrupedal robot called Wildcat that has run as fast as 16 miles per hour. And MIT and Boston Dynamics robots are all funded by, of course, the U.S. Department of Defense's research affiliate, the Defense and Advanced Projects Agency, or DARPA. Again, not a charitable altruistic organization. It is. It is. They build stuff to kill people, but supposedly they say, they save lives. But what can you do? A swimming pool in northern Italy has supported an initiative by the local Islamic Center and announced courses specially designed for Muslim women. The effort, planned as a way of social integration, is not welcomed by Italian right-wingers. The project, launched in Sesto San Giovanni in the suburbs of Milan, is in its second year. Italian Corriere della Sera reported the organizers of the swimming course for Muslim women say it's designed not only as a sporting activity but also as a way to socialize. No full swimming suit, which is called it's called a burkini. A burkini. No full swimming suit or a burkini is needed, but the women are required to wear a wetsuit with sleeves and knee-length shorts as well as a swimming cap. Female instructors are another strict rule. Of course, scheduled to start in January next year, is open to Muslim women of all nationalities and welcomes non-Muslims too. Isn't that nice of them? So long as you wear a burkini. Hosted by the largest sports association in Sesto, it aims to help locals overcome religious and social prejudices and is an important moment of integration. The idea's opponents argue the swimming course is a classic example of reverse discrimination, which of course it is, comparing it to outdated traditions such as separate bathing areas for men and women, which of course have long been abandoned in Italy. Plus, you can pretty much swim naked in Italy or with a thong or topless. but when conducted out of respect for the observance of Islamic rules, everything is permitted. Vivian Beccaloso, head of the right-wing Brothers of Italy National Alliance Party, said, otherwise, we are accused of racism. After asking us to remove crucifixes from public places, to remove the nativity scene from schools, it is now the pool? Who knows what will come next? In May, members of another Italian right-wing party had already protested against swimming pools for Muslims only. Supporters of the Forza Nuova, the new force far-right group, staged a demonstration in Venice where a special